Hi everyone! Welcome to Working with Designers, a podcast where we discuss how businesses and designers work together to make an impact. I'm Kristen Silva, and alongside co-host Jake Cooper, we're here to share our insights gathered from 12 years of working as professional designers, as well as the gripes, humor, and discussion that goes on behind the scenes. So let's dive in. I feel like it's been a while for some reason, and it hasn't.
It's like our normal kind of rotation, but it really, I don't know, something about like the year kicking off. Yeah, the year just kind of getting going and feeling like things are moving. Things are moving fast. Do you have a lot going on right now?
My husband has COVID, so this is the new podcast studio. It's actually kind of funny because I was like, okay, this like feels very based on our research. This is got a little backlighting, some props, some plants. Everything's,
It's actually great. It's a great little background. It almost looks too good. It's like you're kind of wondering if it's a green screen or not.
Well, you know what it is it's the one room that we're not using for anything right now. It's just like a spare room. So it's got a lot of, there's nothing in it. Which makes it for a good set,
I know.
right?
I think this is a podcast studio now.
I think so. And also, so you can't see it, but right in front of me is a double like window.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need like a light or anything coming over.
That's great.
Yeah.
You don't have the ridiculous glare in your glasses like I do.
Glasses, a halo. Yeah. Yeah. My eye's been irritating me so much lately. I think it's allergies. So I've been trying to wear glasses more.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, what are you thinking today? So I know we're doing today's kind of rogue. We're just chatting and trying it out. I like that you have a little.
Yeah, I got the little cup.
Yeah. So since there's COVID in the house right now, I have like liquids upon liquids next to me. So if I have to step out at some point, I do apologize.
Yeah, no worries. All good.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from at least like the beginning of the year, I've got a couple things that I want to ask you.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
here for
it. I'll just as I exit my hundreds of screens here to try to find even where my notes are. Okay. So the questions that I have that I wanted to go over, and we might not go through all of them, but that I'm curious about that we haven't really held space for, at least not on air, is kind of like, I'm very curious to know sort of Jake's mindset at the negotiation table.
Ooh, okay.
And then also I wanted to touch on, you really dive into books and have all these great references. And so kind of wanted to bug your brain about just kind of your creative process. And then,
which is hilarious because I haven't finished a book in a while. I'm like,
maybe it's just a like a information
just good at
retention.
faking it. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. And then I have some things about, some things that are going on in my life recently regarding cost structures.
Mm.
And then wanted to know how you're feeling about the podcast. I've got so many little things here. And then also didn't know if you wanted to talk about TikTok and how when this airs, I don't think we're going to be accessing it anymore because that's Sunday, which is only a couple days from now. But when this airs, it's going to be past news. So.
Yeah, I've been all over TikTok the last couple of days, just kind of watching the decline. Like so many people are doing like extra weird shit just because they know it's coming to an end. So it has been kind of fascinating to see, people using this platform differently on its last kind of throes and just kind of what they're doing. And it's not something that you really get a chance to be privy to in that kind of parasocial way too. Like you've kind of been peeking into all these different people's lives for however long you've been using TikTok. Maybe it's been years, maybe it's only you just followed someone this week or something, but to see them suddenly start acting differently, it's like breaking the barrier a little bit, breaking that fourth wall, but also, I don't know. It's like,
do you have an example?
No, well, I'm thinking to myself, I was like, there's people that are like, well, show's over. Like, nobody's going to stop me. What could I do? And I'm like, whoa, okay. They're announcing it, not that that's actually happened yet, but people are getting really like, there's no fucks anymore. We know this is out, so just go nuts.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I am a watcher. I'm not a content creator on TikTok.
Yeah.
I think that TikTok is like one of those, it's like your bad cousin. You know what I
In
mean?
what way? No, in what way?
It's just, you never know what to expect. It's like you're at the dinner table and someone's just like this unpredictable corner of just like wild, not really goes with status quo or like any social norms. It's just kind of this wild card. So maybe a family. I don't know. I don't really have a cousin that's like a wild card, but you know what I mean?
I was going to say, you're putting that one cousin under the bus right now.
I know, but I mean like as like an
know
analogy.
who you are.
You know when you watch like films and sometimes there's this like cinematic sequence or style where the director or producer creates these milliseconds of just someone's brain thinking, and it's like fire, smashing something, baby crying, this and that. And then it's like all this compiled like chaos that's just like letting your brain just go rampant. That's what I think the TikTok algorithm is based off of. Like,
yeah, it's just wild. It's no filter.
It's no filter, and I think it's dangerous, but, you know.
You're like, I'm glad it's banned. I'm glad it's going away.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I'm curious. I'm curious to see a full ban go into effect. Maybe that's not like a good thing, you know? But, you know.
Yeah, I think it's probably TikTok on the whole is probably a net negative in terms of like people's health and well-being. But it is kind of sad to see it go because it is like a source of entertainment and a source of, for some people, income, whether that's, you know, a genuine moral route or not. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird to see this thing go away in the public eye and something that was so big for what it is. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something that is even similar that's been banned in our society or culture. And I can't think like going back. I'd have to like do some research to even understand what that might be.
Yeah.
I also saw that food coloring red is officially...
A red dye or whatever.
Red something is officially off on the FDA kind of side.
Yeah.
Small
big changes. It's really going to rattle the American... well-being.
Candy industry. I think it's in a lot of stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
farewell.
Farewell. So, what would you like to talk about this week? Do you have anything hot on the brain?
I have nothing hot on the brain. I took a few notes. I was facing kind of an interesting like crossroads with a client this week where I had to decide, or I was like, I had the question of, is investing in your brand really the right move for you right now? Or should it just be more marketing focused? Because like this person is in business doing okay, but has like no online presence really and is getting by. So something's working, like the word of mouth is working, or the Google My Business page is working. And there's room to grow for the brand for sure. But it's also, if you're in a situation where you want to just take your business further, it might be better to just, get your name out there more than focusing on, tightening up some of the brand stuff. And I was curious if you have a similar like experience with a client where you maybe had to say, let's go down this marketing path rather than a brand focus path, and how you would kind of shift what your offer is to that. Or do you just say, come back to me later kind of thing?
Never come back to me later.
Yeah. Let's work with you now. Yeah.
No, I don't know. I say that, but I don't actually know. I've turned people down, but no, it's interesting that you bring that up. So I don't know if this is similar, but I'm going to see it. Let me know if this kind of comes up, because this is weirdly happening right now for me. And it's really love this client. And, they hired my team for a web redesign. And their website it's bad. It's Frankenstein from multiple hands, and it just no designer's been touching it,
Yeah.
Not, at least, I don't know. I don't want to say it to that degree, but I'm going to guess it wasn't really a designer that really held the reins to the last version. Things aren't necessarily, it's kind of like when you put patches on a pair of jeans, you know what I mean? It's like, this is a horizontal landscape, you know what I mean? Like, why are we doing, why is it this, why are the margins huge? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you know what I mean?
You're like, that's a choice. Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of weird kind of moments like that in their past branding. And I'm not trying to sit here and analyze that, it is what it is. But they hired us, and the interpretation was, okay, well, we have this brand and we were really excited for this new year and we want to do a refresh to celebrate the brand. And maybe it was under my own miscommunication, but I thought that the brand was complete. Like, they just went through a rebrand. I thought that was kind of the communication that was going on. In any case, once we get into the project, I asked to see the brand guidelines. Should have seen the brand guidelines before then. There's no such thing as brand guidelines. This is a logo and 3 colors, and they're not good. Like, the colors are not current. They weren't, like, chosen on the way that our digital landscape projects color. So yeah, you couldn't lay them over each other. They were a bit drabby in like a way that wasn't interesting, and it didn't complement one another, and they were coming from different hues. And anyway, so I was like, okay, so we just signed on to this like big web redesign, and they don't really have much. So I was like, okay, I can like pump in some color, kind of push a little bit, but not get too into branding. Anyway, we go through draft 1, and the result of that meeting was, we really want you to like own this project, and it can be in your portfolio and all this stuff. And so I'm trying not to be cynical and be like, are you kidding me? Like, if you want this to be like, if you want a good brand, hire us for branding. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, and I'm very open with a lot of, like, I work with a lot of really collaborative structures. So I'm totally fine sometimes, like, trying different ways out to work well with the team. But then there's moments when it's just like, shit, I've been doing this for 20,000 hours of my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, yeah, we could go against the grain if you want to, but if you want to know my thoughts and the question that comes to mind, that's like, this is going down a gripe. I'm sorry. I'll get it back. But I'm just kind of like, in one way, I'm like, do you know what you're doing? Like, do you know that, like, is this a take advantage kind of moment? Because not loving that.
Yeah. Do you think it's that they're under kind of appreciating branding as a focus? Like, they just didn't even think this is branding that needs to be done. They thought it was just web stuff. Or do you think they're trying to like get more work out of the same budget kind of thing?
I don't know. I mean, again, I really like them. There is a possibility. I don't know if you'll ever know, right? Like, it's like you have a choice as a designer to play the cynical card, hold your cards back, and be like, well, this is what we were hired for, and this is what we're doing. Or do you do the couple swift moves that you can do? It's not a total brand direction, but you're getting them into a place that they wanted for like a fraction of the cost. I don't know. It's tough, It's tough.
Yeah. And how right is that end result if they don't know what their brand is to begin with? Like, if it's going to change. So it's like, it could be visually more appealing in a direction that they think is right for them, but until you do the research or really dig down into what the brand means, who knows? It's just a visual. It has no,
it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
I like to think of these moments, and it feels like this is kind of a moment that I'm going through, that it's like design's kind of like a game of football where you kind of have all of these strategies baked in, you train, you do all of these things, and then once you get to working with the opponent, which is the client,
Mm-hmm.
there are these moments where you have to figure out, all right, are you just going to Hail Mary it and be like, we'll see if this works. This might not work, but I think this is what we're kind of cornered to do.
Yeah.
Or do we sit and put our foot down and say, well, we just got hired for this major brand that you gave us this opportunity, but you need more than this. And if we had more time and we had more of these, then we could do this the right way. You know?
So what are you going to do?
So I was
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, so as a curmudgeon all damn week, I've been a curmudgeon about it. I get excited about it. Every time I talk to them, I get uplifted and excited. But like, they're good people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to feel like, you know, it's a good natured, like it's not from a place of malice or, you know, they're not those kind of people anyway. So I really think that they just are not really that skilled in this space. Yeah. And I need to take from this, like, what can I learn? I need to educate my clients a little more next time, or like see a guidelines before I sign on. If you say you have guidelines, like a 2-page, that's bullshit. That's not guidelines, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that I'm going to meet them in the middle, of course, you know? But I think, yeah, I've been a curmudgeon all week not wanting to meet them in the middle in this because I'm like, this is not right. This is not the right way of doing things. Am I going to meet them in the middle? Of course. Of course I am.
Yeah. I feel like if I were in your shoes, I would, you know, be talking to them like if you want more brand help, more of a brand focus than just the web design that you hired, like we need more time and more budget to do that. And you could keep the budget you have for the website and just really figure out all the components of that, the functions, all that stuff, minus kind of the brand component of it, because that might change, obviously. And then approach, you know, a second phase with more of a brand like program kind of going into it. And maybe they'd be receptive to that, or maybe not. But it would explain that, like, you know, these things take time. You can't kind of shoehorn half a brand strategy if you want it to really work.
So I've been pretty honest with them in regards to timeline, budget. You know, they're aware of the fact that they don't really have a lot of assets and they're asking me to kind of do this the way that they're asking me to do this. Some of the things that I might think are the problem is that I don't know. I think they're realizing in the middle of this that they are looking for brand more than technical web.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of this, I think what I'm realizing is that the people that I'm working with are held to, they have a board. This is not a nonprofit, but are they a nonprofit? I think they're for-profit model, but they have a board of directors that it's a complex organization where it's like, I don't know if they even can be given more money. You know what I mean? To them, they've got given like a chunk of money to do this. In the big scheme of things, it's, you know, still not enough to do a full rebrand and a full website.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the problem is like, we've talked about budget before and it's not something that's not on the table, but there's a hard line at where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And you'll make it work for sure. They'll be happy by the end of it.
As we all do, but yeah, it's kind of frustrating because you're just kind of like, I guess the way that I think of it, and I'm curious to know if you do the same, is when I look at the scope, once they start getting in my head and being like, I want this, this, and this, but it's not on the scope of work, I say, okay, we'll do that, that, and that, and we're going to take away this, this, and this to replace that. You know what I mean? Or like simplify things. So that's how I get it in scope, so that I don't go underwater. You know? Right.
I do the same thing. And usually I try and work out what their big goals are first, as I'm sure you do too, and have them give me the budget. And then I'll say, here's how we can spend it so that you're getting the most for your money. And I'm not just working on an expensive project that sounds right, but isn't right, you know? So that's all honestly what I do. I try not to, reduce my rate or reduce whatever so that I can keep the quality high. We just take away some aspect that's not right for right now, and we do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. That's my strategy. Yeah. Pull away from one area, focus in another. But
Yeah.
I don't know, going back to your marketing thing, I don't know if, your scenario, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So I think, do you think that my situation is connected or it's a little different?
I think it's a little different, but it's the same kind of headspace for sure. Like my example is kind of a real example too, where and it's funny, I think your clients are typically more educated about brand and design and the functions of the two than the clients that I tend to work with, because I tend to kind of bring people up. They're usually like the more overwhelmed solopreneur kind of level of people, or small team level that don't have brand guidelines to start with. And this scenario is that case as well. But yeah, I think having to educate on the differences between branding and marketing and design and where's the right place to put that money is like a hard question to consider at the early stages of a business, or like at an inflection point in the business where you're trying to transition into a different, level.
So, can you give me a little more details on where you're thinking with the marketing?
Yeah, so like I was approached to do mostly like web focus, like a website redesign, but also maybe some brand stuff. And it was kind of vague. And this was just at the kind of discovery call phase rather than let's actually scope everything out and do it. And as we started talking, the details kept coming in of like, oh, you have no web presence. Your website is good, not great. And you have a brand, but you worked with 3 different designers before, and it's a little all over the place, and it doesn't seem like you know where the assets are. So it's kind of like shaky ground. And the interest is, can we do a website? And I'm thinking like, should we do brand focused stuff, like actually get you a package together so you know what to do and you have all your assets? But really, they're not in a position to invest a ton of money to kind of do all that needs to be done. And maybe not all that stuff needs to be done right now either, because things are working. But there is more potential to lean more into the marketing side of, let's get you, you don't really want to do ads because the client like didn't want to go down that route. So maybe we get you some social media templates and we design those to be well branded. We'd focus on like leave behinds for meetings and networking events and things so that you get your name out there and you have something to distribute. More of a marketing focus than an internal brand, like focusing on the message and things like that. And that was kind of my pitch, like moving towards that direction because it's more effective for them, is the thinking.
And did they shut down the idea of working on tone and messaging and like mission, vision, value, proposition, those kind of like core pieces?
I think they weren't ready for that. Like I didn't even really get into that, but I think they weren't in a place to see that. They were just trying to get the business like up and running and together before even touching that.
So they're not really making much money from this. Is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't fully know, but they want to be making more money, like to be more sustainable. So their focus is more on getting it more consistent rather than, changing direction.
Yeah, it's backwards for sure. It's definitely the same. Like in the larger piece, the 2 things we're working on are absolutely the same thing, where it's like, okay, so you want me to drive with no wheels on the car? Cool.
Yeah.
We can see how this goes. It's going to be rough. Let's hope the car doesn't go on fire, but we'll try,
Well, that's the funny thing is like traditionally I would say let's do all the branding first and get your story down straight. But if you're trying to just like build up cash reserves to make moves, you're really you're not showing up in the market yet. So you really need to go that route first. You need to get more people coming in. So right?
This
Chicken
is a
or
weird
is it
space,
chicken or
for
the
sure.
egg? Is it chicken or the egg? Is it? Do you
It's
have to do
called
one?
it's called research and development. That's what they're in.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
Are you going to work with them?
I think so. I'm gonna work with them, and we're gonna do. We ended up. It's not signed off, but we're gonna do like a 1 month like subscription, like a 1 month residency, if we will, where we're just gonna kind of attack as much as we can in that 1 month, and it'll mostly be like brochures and mailers and things like that, so that they will have more of a presence out there, and maybe at the same time we'll refine some things as we go. But we're gonna start there just so that we have something going on.
I think it's really important to meet your clients where they're at. If they don't have the vision, if their eyes are closed, their ears are closed, getting them to that place where they can start opening their eyes or ears, I think is also like a responsibility of us as strategists and designers. I think it really is. Because we're communication experts at the end of the day. And if we have someone in front of us that is blind and deaf, that's a starting point. Unfortunately, it's something that we have to deal with more often than we'd like to admit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really like bringing out the educator side of the job, where you're having to kind of gently push them in a direction of, this is good for you. This is how it should work. It'll be good, trust me, kind of thing, without feeling also kind of salesy at the same time. And I think this question came about because as I was in that meeting, I started to get the ick over, should I be selling this person a website? It kind of feels like they don't really need that. So I'm feeling a resistance to working on this. Maybe I should explore a different avenue. And that's what ended up happening. Yeah. I think next episode we'll have to check in. I want to check in on your client and see how their web thing is going. Maybe this will be a serial, like an episode per episode saga. Yeah.
This puts me in a place of being like, do whatever you want. And it's like, that's not design. That's art.
I have to say, I don't think they meant it this way, but the phrase, we want this to be a portfolio piece for you, is so condescending. It's
so insulting.
I know.
It's so insulting.
I'm sure these people didn't mean it that way, and they're nice, but...
No, they're nice. I think that they were very careful with their words.
I would have raised a red flag on that one.
I know. I was like, you want it to be... I have plenty of things in my portfolio that okay, whatever, yeah. No, I don't think that they meant it that way. What I had to do was I was like, can you guys, hit me with it? Like, tell me what went on. It's just like such a, you know how it is. Putting on branding brain and then putting on web design brain is like... It's like, we're already down the tube. We're already in the funnel. You know what I mean? Like, we're not thinking on that high level. To go back out, because branding's what? You have to figure out what it isn't before what it is, right? That's the true definition of branding. Everyone's like, oh, it's so simple. Yeah, you have to check off the 50 things that it isn't before you figure out what it is. So... Anyway, Kristen's going on a wrath right now, so I'll peel back out of this. But you're just like, this is therapy, because I listen to it all the time independently.
I'm like, this is the show. This is what the people want.
You're like, praise. Right. Yeah, no. So I
would feel the same way. You're me. I'm in your shoes. I would say the same thing. It sounds like they need to get more clear on what they're working on. Like, working on the website has different goals and different objectives than working on the brand. You can work on both at the same time, but you have to understand what those differences are. It sounds like they don't understand those differences yet.
I think
in that moment.
And I hate to jump into like critical design brain with you and then jump out and be like empathy with the client, because, that's now my next case here. But to twist it around, and why this is so complex is it's like, they have a whole board of people above them. So I don't know who's pulling what strings, and I'm not in those conversations. So I can't tell you what they're beholden to. You know what I mean? Could very much be people that are telling them what to then tell me. Who knows? So, which is often a situation that happens when you have a double tier between board members and staff members that are actually,
Yep. And one of the challenges of working that I don't think people appreciate enough in those multi-level of approval structures like corporate, which I was used to, is if you're not in the room dictating, like if you're not in the room getting the feedback and telling them what feedback you're looking for what you're working on, you're not necessarily presenting the stuff that you want to present. Like if the middleman is taking their idea of what the project is and their thoughts of here's what I like or don't like about it to their boss isn't going to know that you're working on just the structure right now or just the, components or the functionality or whatever. They're having to translate for you up the chain, and then you're going to get a similarly like echo chamber distorted idea of feedback back. So it's really tough to kind of manage those different levels. You need to have very clear instructions for what type of feedback you want to hear and what you're working on. And it's hard.
Or just have a designer, or, I don't even know if it would be me, but like, having maybe the project lead, like right now I'm the project lead on this. Mm-hmm. On this account, but I could see like a project manager on the design side that's savvy at being like, no, tell me everything that's in your head, and they can funnel out the noise of, we're gonna ignore that one. Thank you for letting us know, but whatever. And then, oh, that's interesting. We didn't see that. Maybe that's actually something we need to observe. You know what I mean? So that they can kind of see all the noise and kind of funnel through what's interesting. Maybe the designer's missed, or like, okay, maybe we need to talk about having a focus group within this if some of it is just like not quite registering with maybe the people that shouldn't be in the decision-making part of this too. Who knows, so.
Yeah, there's that element of it too, of like, whose opinion really matters in this room. Not that it's yours, but like who's the decision maker versus who's, putting in their 2 cents.
Yeah, I don't know if like the CFO needs to be in with the CMO, you know what I mean? Or something.
When you share like new rounds of design or whatever, do you present that new work, or do you email it off and say, let's get a call after? Or is it just the email? Like, here's the new changes, tell me what you think, kind of thing.
Depends on the structure, but I often send it off, and then depends on the structure and depends on the budget too. But I would say if I can send as much as I can through email and then have follow up for presentations, instructions, whatever.
Yeah, I do the same. I try and email all my stuff so that it's as asynchronous as possible, so you can kind of look and take your time to digest versus like having a live reaction call, because things are always going to be distorted, negative or positive, on that kind of first reaction call. But yeah, it's tricky because you give up the opportunity to kind of explain what you're intending with this round or with this design when it's just passed on via email.
I send videos. I send a walkthrough.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I do a quick instruction, like a less than 5 minute. I use Loom, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I go on and say, hey, I'm going to walk you through this real quick, just from a high level, so that they can understand sort of my brain and thinking and context and insights to things. And so, I mean, I don't instruct them on saying, hey, look at it before looking over the video, but maybe I should, because I do think that it's important to see something, think of your fresh ideas, and then get context, because there is some good things to know about a knee-jerk reaction, especially when you're in the visual side. You want it to be a positive experience. If you're looking at it and it's visceral and it's wrong, okay, like...
Yeah. I'm a little curious about, like, I still have it written down, like, what systems do you have in place for lead gen and getting inquiries and stuff, but that we could save that for another week too. That's kind of dry.
I think it's not dry. We could talk about it, but I don't know if I have. I mean, I think that's like one of those, like...
Yeah, maybe it's a quick answer.
Wouldn't we all like to know the answer to lead gen? You know what I mean? I think it just changes. I think the best things that I could say for quick tips in regards, I was just on a call with my design mentor, I guess, business coach.
Yeah. Coach is paid, mentor's unpaid.
Mentor.
There we go. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was talking to her, very successful woman. She lives in Portsmouth now, and I think I've talked to her. I talked to you about it beforehand.
Yeah, she's the business is intuitive.
Business is intuitive kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So she ran a good stint in marketing and made a great name for herself. And so anyway, now she's a business advisor, part of the 10K program. Are you familiar?
I've
Goldman
heard of
Sachs
that.
10,000 small
Yeah,
business
that's
program.
what Carly Ayers did, I think, with HREF.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that, and I was cohort I think 15 in the state.
Mm. Damn.
So, yeah. Yep.
Isn't
So
isn't that
it's
like hard to get into? That's pretty. Isn't it kind of prestigious? That's great.
Oh, that's a good question. It doesn't feel like it, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. Not to say it like that, but you know, I was in there with all kinds of people. You know how when you go to like a Chamber of Commerce event, it's such a mixed bag?
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say like same vibes for 10KSB. I think that there's certain credentials that they've been a little more lax about. So I think more people can get in now. I don't know. But
Cool. Well, either way, that's great.
so I met this business advisor, a mentor through 10KSB. So I was having a chat with her, and she had said, she goes, it's really hard right now for business, and I noticed that every time that we talk, you have clients coming in. That's really great. And I laughed and I said, what I think it is that I prioritize my mental health. And there are moments in the year with my cycle of business and the people that I work with that I don't get clients, and it has framed the way that I've run the studio. It's not your traditional advertising firm, it's a collective model. So it ebbs and flows in terms of how many hands per year and how, in seasons. But then also, too, I think something that I keep in my back pocket is, a side gig, So waitressing, it doesn't take up nearly even 5% of my year, but it gives me the mental health space and I'm on my feet and I'm talking to people, and I have that is not something I don't think everyone can tap into. So I know that I have a very unique situation in that regard where it's right on the water. I've had this relationship built over 10 years. I can kind of jump in and jump out as I please. It's never affecting my design work or my career. So, and I don't lean on it like a crutch. I just it's there when I do need a little extra buffer around me if I don't have anything else going on. But also it's just so I was talking to her and I was like, I really think keeping just a toe in the door of some other avenue really keeps me grounded. It keeps me less pressure at the negotiation table, less risk, in a way. Yeah. And then I also don't I can jump into funding. We can talk all about that. I don't know if you want to talk about how to fund a business, get it up, play around, see if you'll lose some money, you'll gain some money, I can talk to you about that kind of stuff. But I would say that I have the ability and the health of the business working in my favor, where I don't ever have to waitress. I could take out business loans here and there and this and that and whatever. I don't know. There's certain times when the market, I'm this is a waitressing time. This isn't a let's take out some money and double down in this or that. Let's watch the market shift and then we'll figure out the strategy. So long story short, I think that when going back to trying to fill your books and outsourcing or finding business, I think that you have to be mentally healthy to be able to do the best you can at the negotiation table. If you have nothing going for you and you come in and you're anxious and you've got nothing, you're going to undersell yourself. You're going to screw yourself over. You're going to do the wrong deal with the wrong person. And it's actually going to fuck you over in month 6 or 7, not maybe in month 1 when it's covering your, lights for the month, but yeah, it can get really scary. And I think there's a lot of risk that designers do. And it's a very beautiful thing that we are in this place, but getting long-winded, so I'll stop. But
no.
I think though that like, yeah, having like some kind of level of balance between if you're constantly in the chair cranking away and you're a digital designer, get up and, be a photographer on the side, be anything, you know what I mean? Just get your feet going and do something else. And if you're making money while being on your feet, great. And if it's not harping on, if you're losing deals by doing that second job, it's not the right second job. You know what I mean? It's got to be a balance, but that's what I think honestly has helped me survive this whole time, is just keeping myself mentally healthy.
So you're kind of like letting the ebb and flow happen. You're like, I'm just going to ride it out and find some other thing during the ebb. Like I'm going to try and manage the ebb and flow by securing myself in other ways rather than, I need to have a constant stream of leads coming in and need to be closing this many deals, blah, blah, blah.
No, I don't stop the marketing funnel. And I know in the marketing scheme, or like in the market, in the business market and landscape, when the business market is saying do this or that or pivot, I start showing, okay, it seems like a time to do more smaller offerings, or, okay, there's an opportunity for larger offerings. I think that there are moments that, are providing both of those.
But do you do ads or anything?
No, I don't do ads.
Yeah. And I don't think you do a ton of like social media content, like
not really
from a marketing kind of POV. It's more either portfolio pushing or personal.
Yeah. Well, what I think a huge part of it is too, is that I think it all depends, right? So it's like when you start your own business, what are you trying to build? If you want an agency model, you're going to need to take out a big chunk of money. You're going to need to find the right skilled experts to work for you, that want to work for you. You're going to need a space for that, most likely, or however, remote, whatever. So there's a lot of money in just upfront costs to get that kind of in motion. And then you need to find out where those big ticket clients are, and you need to push your campaigns, advertising, marketing to those places. Yeah. And then you're running an agency model. When I started my own business, I don't want an agency. I left agency world to not be in another agency. And I think the beauty of self-employment is, with the exception of, I think we're seeing a little bit more pressure to kind of be a little different in the last year, but with AI and everything that's going on with tech, but in general, you can grow it at your pace. So no one's telling that you need to balloon overnight. And so my focus has always been making sure that the clients that I work with have an extremely good, positive, lasting relationship with me. My client retention stays high, which it does. I've had years where I've taken 0 new clients, and it's all been sustained on, past clients. Yeah. That's a strategy of mine. And I don't break my neck over when we're in an election year and people start, clenching their wallet. I don't freak out. Yeah. Because I have other ways of maintaining that. Yeah. And I've done both.
Yeah. And that's kind of the...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
My last thing that I was going to say is I've had years where I've never had like a moonlight job, and it's been fine. And then I've had years where I have a moonlight job, and my mental health is far better when I have a moonlight job. So I stay with that. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it for sure. Like find your stability however you got to get it. But the path of being a solopreneur or an entrepreneur or whatever does have that ebb and flow to it. So you got to find whatever your solution is to mitigate that. And whether that's, charging appropriately so that you can weather that change, or if it's, getting security and benefits probably in a second job somewhere else, that's another way to do it too. That's great. But I would say that I have two thoughts. The benefits of staying small is that you have a lot less to worry about in terms of, bring on new clients or marketing yourself like crazy to get your name out there, because you can keep the actual work low, because you only have to sustain yourself versus an agency where you have to deal with all that stuff. And my second thought was that you're saying again that, it's all word of mouth. The majority of your clients have only come from either referral or naturally, like, people gravitating towards you one way or another, rather than direct marketing.
Yes, but I will say that I think that there's more to it than that. I think that, I really love working in a share space. Sometimes working in a share space is just that. There's no level of relationship building there. But when you're in a share space for 2 or 3 years, you start seeing the same faces. It's kind of like that neighbor that you never really knocked on the door of, but you constantly go by, see them walking their dog or whatever. I think that making sure that you are placing yourself like symbiosis, right? So it's like, yes, like word of mouth, but also you need to be part of your community. You need to be like, I would be a huge advocate of that. Like, I think that the word of mouth started from me being in like places where I want to be. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, it's like one of those things where it's like,
you need to be where the business happens.
Well, I don't even know if I would say that. I would just say be in the place that you like to be in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like networking. I don't think necessarily you have to go to like the Business Insider networking event 2025 hosted by Goldman Sachs. You know, if you want to, great. It's like you're going to get a bin of everything, great. But also if you're just like, say you're really into rock climbing, well, fucking go rock climbing 10 times, you know what I mean? Like, get part of that community, and the people that go there are probably your people, and they're probably going to know someone that needs a service of yours at some point if you foster and you pour energy into whatever you're loving to do. You know what I mean? Be a balanced person. Don't just sit there and nerd out in front of your like designs. Like, go out and do the things you like doing, and those communities are the people you're going to work with anyway. Those are the people you want to work with.
Yep. You made me think of another reference, so I can be booky for a minute.
Yay! I like your book references.
The same book I recommended, I think, a recording or so ago, Show Your Work by Austin Kleon, talks about this idea of a genius rather than genius. It's someone who, rather than being like a virtuoso or something at their craft, they know how to use their immediate surroundings to their advantage. So just kind of being present and being involved in different groups and strengthening relationships in that group is another way of just really growing your capabilities and putting yourself out there. There's a lot of like net benefits to just being out there and being seen, even if it's not for, professional reasons or being hired or anything. Just kind of getting in that community can be super beneficial. And I think Brian Eno, the guitarist and songwriter, is one of the examples he uses. But I think Basquiat's another one too. I think he was part of a group that just surrounded himself with other artists, and all of them kind of brought each other up together rather than, I need to focus on my craft and focus on one thing. Like, the collaborative spirit and being out and social is really beneficial. So yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, so that's my answer to your question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important. I say, like, when I said that you're predominantly word of mouth focused, or your predominant method of marketing is word of mouth, wasn't a criticism. It's more like championing that this is working for so many people, and it's saying it as a, dispelling of the marketing bros on TikTok that's now being banned, who are saying you need to do cold calls, you need to make these lead magnets and go to these things. Like, no, it's just good work begets good work. Take care of people and they'll take care of you. I was talking to a designer who's been in business, I think, for like 10 years now. He's been working for himself right out of high school, and he's been killing it. He's doing it really well. He's like a one-man agency, kind of like me and you. And I asked him, like, so how do you weather kind of the storm of people coming in and out? Do you do any kind of lead gen? He's like, no, it's just word of mouth. And that's the answer. It seems like everybody I talk to, it's the same thing. It's just, put yourself out there, get in touch with people, and be helpful. And you'll find it'll grow over time, kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I want to ask you in terms of, because you read a lot of books and you remember a lot of stuff from books. I tend to like be a very I'll skim books and I'll kind of, I just have a different way of kind of processing things. But it does feel like when you're reading, it influences a lot in your creativity. Is that correct?
I think so. I love to learn, so I try and take in a lot. And the books that I reference are books that I've like made notes about. So they are stickier in that way.
And do you find so how do you get to a point of, I think that there's probably a lot of people that will, they're in the middle of a situation where they're designing, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking this. And, they go on, they look at articles, they look at a couple pieces of resources of some sort, and then they just have at it and go for it. And it feels as if the reading long form, while I think a good amount of people do it when they can, I think there's often a good chunk of people that probably kind of steer away from design books, and they're trying to do it for a pleasure. And so they only pick them up for they don't read them they read them in sections. They don't read them throughout the way that maybe a book's intended. I don't know. I guess my question is do you often pick up design books in your leisure, or do you reread them, or how does it come into your creative process?
I actually don't read a lot of design with a capital D design books. It's mostly business or productivity books or nonfiction educational kind of books. I read a bunch of Alex Hermosi when I was starting my business too. $100 million leads, $100 million sales. Yeah. And I read a good bit of fiction too. I don't have a steady, I need to read nonfiction all the time kind of thing. I have been really bad about reading recently, but there are some books behind me that I do reread over and over because I get a few more things out of it. And I like to, if I find something really helpful, in the last couple of years, I've been trying to take notes on the books that I do read, because I'm finding that you can make use of them differently when you're a business. Your information becomes an intellectual property when you're a business, because you're, sharing your expertise as part of the service. So I've been kind of taking reading a little bit more seriously in that way, but mostly just to learn and just to keep information. And through the course of being someone that bookmark a million things when I was growing up, and has his toes in a lot of different interests and things like that, I read a productivity book called Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. And he got me down this whole kind of personal knowledge management niche, which is people that like to collect information and make use of it and take notes and yada yada. And he talked about how the process of taking notes and writing down your thoughts and recording them and having to express them makes them more concrete in your brain. You remember them more easily and more strongly. So if I find something that I really like and enjoy, I try and take notes on it just so that I remember. And that's how I can pull some of those books up out of thin air, as I've just written them down every once in a while and I have notes on them. So I don't have a photographic memory. I don't have encyclopedic knowledge on everything. I'm just I remember those books.
It's very inspiring. I've noticed that from the beginning of our talks on this podcast, that you are very up on your reading and archiving of some value. Yeah. And I think it's really
You're going to find it's all references from those same 8 books. It's
but it's 8 books.
It's actually a small library.
But it's 8 books that you've chosen and said, hey, there's value to these 8 books, not the 50 that maybe got you to the 8 books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And beyond that, and there's so much value in that in regard of just you being able to sift and say, hey, like this one's a very good book. This one isn't, you know? And then like, even like a level deeper to that, just you taking the time to citing these things out. It's just lovely, because I don't think that that's actually something that I think more people should do. I mean, me included. I have a lot of the books that you've cited are on my bookshelf, are things I digest and I go through, but I don't take the time to sit and really say, wait a minute, let me read that again. That's a profound piece right there that I'm resonating with. Let me keep that for later so I can come back to it, because that is the essence of my philosophy or whatever it is, my process or whatever it is. And I think that it's really nice to hear. So yeah, I mean, and then I also actually, so I have Austin Kleon's, his 2 other books.
Keep Going and Steal Like an Artist.
Steal Like an Artist. I didn't have the one that you actually show your work.
That's the middle one too. That's his second book.
So I don't know if I lost it or what happened, but it wasn't on my shelf. All I know is I had the other 2. So I, when you brought it up, I read it last week.
Good. Oh yeah. Did you like it?
I did. I thought it was great, but it's such a pocketbook. I love how his style. I like the art of size of books and so forth. Anyway, I had great pleasure in reading it, and you inspired me to do that. So that was great.
I think I pre-ordered that one because I think that Show Your Work was the first book of his that I read. And I read Steal Like an Artist later. That's his first book that he put out. And I have somewhere behind me, it came with one of his newspaper blackout poems. So nice. It's like a little prized possession that most people don't understand what it's about. But I'm like, no, if you knew Austin Kleon, it would be really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So when it comes to reading books and stuff, is it ever tied to projects? Does a project ever make you be like, you know what, I need to look back at my notes that I did on this, that, and the other? Or is it something that's kind of running in parallel to your practice?
It's more often than not running in parallel. It kind of informs my own systems rather than one specific project. Because they're all ideas. They're all like how to approach work or how to keep going with work. And like principles of psychology and you know, the ways that we think. It's providing more perspective than it is a prescription to a specific problem. So it just informs me rather than the situation.
And do you have, these are some funny questions. Do you have like a designated reading chair? Or
no. So kind of, yeah. I guess kind of. I have a specific chair that was intended to be a reading chair that I like to read in, but since I've gotten my dog, it's no longer a reading chair because it doesn't accommodate both of us.
Is it, okay. Well, I guess my question, so are you, okay, so I believe that everyone's on the sleeping spectrum from narcolepsy to insomnia. Yeah. Do you lean towards one or the other?
I'm a 6-hour guy. I can get 6 hours of sleep and be fine.
Okay. However, I guess what I'm asking is, do you get sleepy when you read?
I do at night. Like when I read at night, it's partly because it's like time designated for reading. Like it's time set aside to focus on this thing, but it also helps me get to sleep. So in a way it makes me sleepy, but during the day, no, it doesn't make me sleepy.
And do you tend to read during a certain time of day? Sorry, these are funny questions, but it's fun. It's like, I think people will like this. Yeah.
I tend to read in the morning and at night when I do. I don't read every day. I try to. I aspire to, but I'm not as focused in that routine right now. But yeah, and since having this business and working for myself, I find myself at coffee shops a lot more often, and that'll be a nice like break to read too. So yeah, just trying to get out in different spaces and change contexts.
So I'm going to ask another question. So I have a friend. She sent me these videos. She's now in Notion. I don't know
Mhm.
if it was from listening to this. I know she listened to a couple of our podcasts, but she did mention that she is now using Notion specifically as a journaling
Yeah.
tool.
A lot of people do that.
So I'm old school. I have
Mhm.
my classic dotted, what is it? How do you even
The
say it?
bullet
Lectrum?
journal.
Luctrum? Like,
Oh,
how
the
do you say
lectern.
lectern? Lectrum? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
I'm
not
not
from
going to pretend.
America. It's not from America, which is why we bought them, right? So it's a European style journal
A
that
like
all the designers, yeah, you have one right next to you. Yeah, one of those. So we just love that European style. We're like, yes, the Swiss might have made these at some point, or German. Let's go for it.
and honestly, we would all be using Moleskine if they weren't so expensive. But they
Yeah,
are.
I
So we all
know.
go like
I know. So yeah, so I have my all of my ideas and ideations in one of those books. Do you tend, when you write notes on, say, these books that you're really inspired by, do you put them down in like a book like me, or are you doing this like on an app, or like how do
I
you handle that database of
for
information?
that kind of note, it's through an app. I use an app, and I've started to actually write and underline in my books now. I used to be very like, you paid good money for this book, you can't touch it, you can't like deface it with notes and stuff. But you know, I'm not giving
So
these
your
away. I'm
notes.
not selling them anywhere. So
Yeah.
I've been writing in the books and highlighting, and then
Pen,
yeah,
pencil,
pen,
like full on. Oh,
permanent,
you're like, this is it. This is
hardcore.
the line.
It's my book.
What kind of pens do you use?
My favorite. Well, this is my favorite. Pilot G2s.
You do the Pilot G.
Pilot G2 point 0.2 or point 0.5. Point 0.5 is a little thick. I got a box of these Arteza roller balls that I like. But yeah, any pen will do. I'm not picky anymore.
I was just curious.
But so, as a weird side tip, I use an app called Readwise, and it's great. It's like, I think it's like $10 a month, or you can buy some kind of subscription for it. If you're reading paper books and you kind of use pen and take notes in the book itself, you can take pictures of the page, and it's got the, what is it, OCR, like it'll translate into text the page and specifically your notes. So you can kind of take a picture of the page, highlight the sections that you've already highlighted. It'll save it in a database, and it will then translate that text into your Notion app or your Apple Notes app or whatever service you're using. So you can digitize your notes like really quickly and easily. And if you're using like Kindle or some other kind of e-reader, it'll do the same thing. So you can kind of sync it up to this service that'll then put it in Notion. So when I'm taking notes or reading something that I like and want to save, I'll take the note however I take the note. It gets synced to Readwise, and then I get a version in Notion or in this other app Obsidian that I use that I can then do whatever I want with. So I
Nice.
get it digitized one way or another.
Nice.
Bring your notes everywhere. Bring them with
Bring
you.
your notes everywhere. Do you find that you read different things in the morning versus the end of day?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Different pieces of content.
I try and read like something fun at night, like when I'm
Mm.
trying to go to sleep. Like that's what it's there for. But then I like reading like smart books, quote unquote smart books, like for my own personal education and for business stuff, just to keep things fresh. And to your point, something that you were talking about earlier, like rereading books, I find specifically with nonfiction books, every time you reread it, you get something different because you've learned something new from something else that now you can kind of synthesize with it. So there are a few books that are like particularly good for rereading, and I'm finding that with like the Austin Kleon books and some of these business books, as I get more educated in other things, I'm like, oh yeah, this makes more sense now. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thanks for diving down that path with me.
Yeah, this is your middle school library read poster. Just put
No,
my face on it.
no, well, no, I think that it's interesting and it's also refreshing because I think that, so many of us overlook the book. I find myself,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, well, that's a good point because as people in a visual profession, I find that like jumping on Instagram or Pinterest, and it's so easy to get overwhelmed by all the like designs that are thrown at you, and it's so easy to get caught up in like FOMO and imposter syndrome of like, oh, am I really this good? Like I have a hard time sometimes getting all that information of really good stuff being like, I'm not living up to a potential, or it surfaces a lot of the insecurities just being overwhelmed by all of these images all at once. Whereas with books, you can, I don't know, it's like it's a different form of knowledge that I find easier to go to for inspiration as a visual creative professional.
Yeah, I'm a huge library nerd. I love going to the library for everything, even like crossing over the whole Pinterest thing. Like I'll go on Pinterest. Pinterest has its place, but I think that it can't be like your end all be all for inspiration. I think there's like things, I mean, we talked about Savvy. I don't know if I'm even saying it right, but it's spelled Savvy.
SAVE.
SAVEE. Yeah, well, I don't know. Not the way that, yeah.
Savvy.
Savvy. Yeah.
Savvy.
So, and there's other kind of image bases that you can kind of, mess around with the algorithms, kind of see how people are kind of populating things. And then also, I think diving into history special collections of some sorts or libraries, so forth.
That's nice. One thing I have definitely been neglecting is refilling the creative tank with new inspiration.
I just found out, like, I was at Providence. I'm familiar with all of the like local archivists. How do you even say it? Archivist? How do you
that's how I'd say it. I don't know if that's right, but that's how I say it.
Archives specialist, we'll say, because I'm not going to say right. Yeah, and the one at Providence Public has been great, and they have a massive like whale collection, like whale history, because it's Rhode Island. And I was like, noted, no idea when I need to go and see this. It's not going to be for anything that I need. And then they also have one that's really interesting that's for body modification, which is not just tattoos, but also like corsets and like the history of like, body modification things. Yeah, so they have some like interesting things. I was bugging them because one day I was in there looking at architecture, like old architecture books, and for like a landscape architecture firm that I was working with last year. And I was talking to the guy afterward, and I was picking his brain. I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head right now. But anyway, lovely, lovely guy. I was like, so what do you guys got? Like, what do you got in the corners of this place? Because all special collections units
show me something good. Show me what you got.
Show me something that you're weirdly obsessed with that no other library is obsessed with. Because all special collections have like their like specialties, right? And so I was like, what are you like the second you see like some kind of memorabilia, you're like, oh my God, it needs to be part of our collection, not their collection, And they're like, we have a huge collection of whale-like things. And I was like, I mean, it makes sense, Rhode Island, like big ocean state, and then, or small, big ocean state. And then they were like, and then we've got some like, just like interesting things. I mean, and I don't even know how big the body modification one was, but it was brought up as like a point of being like, oh, I wouldn't have thought to ask that. So I love like picking their brains and seeing like, what's going on.
It's making me wish I spent more time at the special collections at RISD while we were there.
Well, I go back
because they had some cool stuff. Do you still have access to it as an alumni?
As an alum, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, if you're ever in this neck of woods, yeah.
We're pulling out some weird shit.
Yeah, the last time
Show me something I gotta wear gloves for. That's
seriously, you're like, they're like, is all of your food away? You're like,
right.
Yes. Are we ready? Let me in. And, it's just so funny. Yeah.
You're like, if you breathe on this, it'll evaporate.
And you're like, okay, no breathing. Got it. Yeah. Well, they have some old, this is years ago. This is years and years ago. Lindsay. Remember Lindsay from college?
Yeah.
Lindsay was pregnant at the time. Anyway, she had a baby shower and she was like, could you like, do this? And, we were young when I developed this invitation. But anyway, it got me to go to the special collections unit, and I found out that they have some really interesting, creepy manuscripts of like the Grimm tales and stuff, which is like, I don't know what you need it for, but just so you know, they have some like creepy things.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is totally baby shower, right? So
yeah,
that's why I was there. Anyway.
Well, I remember they famously, like through Brown, had the book bound in human skin, which was cool. Everybody seemed to talk about that. Yeah. It might have just been Brown. I don't know if they brought it over or something, but there's cool stuff. Cool stuff. Yeah. You got to ask.
Yeah. Wait, where in Brown?
I think the Brown Library.
Everyone has, I guess, special collections.
Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't one of those Brown RISD people. The Brown RISD dual degree people.
Fair. Me either.
Not special. Sorry. It's funny. I found, I don't remember her name, but there's somebody on TikTok going to RISD right now and making TikToks at RISD.
Really?
And she's in graphic design. So it was very weird to like see it through the Gen Z TikTok lens.
Yeah.
I was like, if this were around. Changed? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. But just the kids. The kids have changed themselves, which is cool.
Yeah, I do like to go and see the biennial whatever.
Yeah, the show.
Shows up, at the Wood Scary. So I guess I have one last thing that I wanted to talk about before we wrap up. And I'm curious if you're cool with talking about it. So, I know we're only not even a couple days. Tomorrow we're going to be recording our first
guest episode.
Yeah, design guests. So I know we were talking in the last, like, in our kind of like warm up on that, on just like, we touched a little bit on starting a podcast of our own. We're both art director level or whatever, creative director, whatever you want to call it. So it's like having two head chefs in the kitchen. How are you feeling with that? Like, how are you, we haven't talked about this, and I think it's a good discussion to have.
Yeah, it was funny because the people we're bringing on are two people that co-own their own studio together. And we thought it would be really interesting to talk about how they structure their business and their relationship as business owners. Because it can be a challenge to have two chefs in the kitchen, as you say. And it totally dawned on me in that conversation, like, oh yeah, we're in that same boat right now. Because we're both designing this thing and trying to figure out where it goes. And I think we're doing really well. I've been in like group project situations where it did not go well. It did not go this well. So yeah, I think we've been working really well together. And it's been nice to kind of approach the creative direction of this brand or whatever, like pretty delicately. And we're now in the throes of a branding process that I think is going to be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's been eye-opening. I feel like from my perspective, it's funny. It's like we both have our own asynchronous leaps of like diving in and giving ourselves like the space to be like, this is all that I'm thinking, blah, 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 and so, and they're not always aligned because of, my busy weeks are different than your busy weeks and so forth. But what I have noticed that's really interesting is that I think we both independently do a leap, and then we see how each other react. And then not even like on a subconscious level, not even in a way that we're vocalizing, we digest and bring that feedback into whatever the next round is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it seems like, I think something that I was a little fearful at first was like, am I going to like steamroll this? Or am I like, is this like because we're art directors, right? And then I didn't know, like, is this like, am I being too pushy? When do I like sit in the back seat versus the front seat? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's tough when because I'm trying to respect your space too. And anyway.
No, the same thing here because it's like it's not like this is Kristen's project and I'm a part of it, or this is Jake's project and Kristen's a part of it. We're both figuring this whole thing out together. So we're both trying to like shape it around what we want it to be in the end. So we're slowly figuring out what that even looks like, what shape that takes. So it's been like a real brand project where what values do we care about? What colors should we be? What things are inspiring to us versus right for what we're saying? I don't know. It's been fun. It's like a real brand conversation. So it's been cool.
I feel the same. I feel like it's been pretty chill. I don't think that either of us are pretty like, I think we're both very seasoned in the like feedback of things that we don't really,
Yeah.
we know what to like.
It's been fun seeing what we did like for people listening at home. We did a brand reaction board where it's kind of a mood board, but we're trying to get a sense of what does this thing make you feel versus is this right or wrong or whatever. Just getting general feedback. It's been really interesting. And
we're trying to see what each other's brains are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a step before a mood board. It's like just getting ideas out there. It's been fun seeing what you're responding to that I didn't think of, or that I was like, oh, this doesn't seem right to me, but you're all for it. So it's like making me think differently. It's cool. It's nice having that.
I agree. It's funny. I definitely sent you knee-jerk reactions towards everything. And then as I've kind of taken a step back, I've looked at them again and I'm like, and I look at your response and I'm like, oh, that's funny. And then I'm like, oh, okay. I'm convinced. I went from hating something to being like, I'm convinced. I don't love it yet, but sounds good. You know what I mean? And I think that's fun about like when you're with the right open-minded like set of creative brains, which I think both you and I are like trained to be so open-minded in that regard. So It works. But it's funny because I was dying laughing on my own about some things where I was just like, we are opposite on this one thing, like totally opposite. But we're pulling from two different things, you know what I mean? From that same piece. So I thought that was really interesting.
We're probably seeing it for two different reasons too. Like I'm sure like you're seeing it for whatever, and I'm seeing it as the structure or as if this were the website, what would I take from this kind of thing. So
I think there's like an emotional reaction to an image. There's also like did nostalgia kick you into the good or bad realm for some whatever reason? And then other things, like did you see like a company go under that was part of marketing that had that style that you're like, no, or you never know. So there's a lot of different things that can be, it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad we're both in it. I'm glad we're not at each other's throats.
Yeah. So question about that. So you've been in a project before that it hasn't gone well with, you said 2 head leaders of some sort?
Yeah, well, just, I mean, when you're trying to work with other creatives, like I did a bunch of portfolios for other people, and it's very hard to get over them seeing that the portfolio has to be representative of them versus accessible to their audience, because they're like, I am the portfolio, I am the creative, I went to art school, I should know how to design this and what's right for me. And you're like, well, there's some things you didn't learn in art school. so which is fine. Like it's different disciplines, and it can be combative in that way where you're trying to, give creative direction to someone who considers themselves very skilled creatively already, but just in a different discipline. So that can cause some conflict. But I think we're both like used to working with people of all different types of mentalities coming into a project, that it's a bit easier for us to like, so what do you think about this? What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I did have a question that probably I should have asked at a different segment of this that I'm wondering if it's too late to ask or if I just jump in.
Yeah, you can jump in.
Um, it was one of our like beginning kind of rattles here that I wanted to know what your feedback was on this. So I had a company reach out to me, a Rhode Island company,
Mm.
and they have like a decent budget for us. Very, I mean, I shouldn't say decent. It's a small budget, but it's workable
Hmm.
for a campaign that they're looking to launch for the season for the summer. And the deliverables are quite straightforward. They want something a little different. They're working on finessing some of their like brand identity work and stuff. Anyway, beforehand, they were like, oh, we're reaching out to a couple Rhode Island local design firms. We're curious to know if you wanted to look over our brief, what you think, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So I did that. We had a quick conversation on the call, and I said, yeah, no, this sounds like a pretty something we would do. And then their response was, would you mind doing a quick exercise for us? And I did the exercise. However,
Hmm.
how are your thoughts on that? Because I'll tell you, I'm not having good thoughts about it.
I went through a similar thing and I felt very uncomfortable. Like my hackles were up the whole time. Like, because I think with design work specifically, there was a big history of working on spec where you do something for free in the hopes that it turns into a paid job, and they just take all the submissions and use it anyway. And I think it's hard to lose that stigma in today's world. So when companies are like, can you do this test or can you show this, you're feeling that you're getting taken advantage of because they're getting work for free.
I will say they said, oh, no, we're willing to pay for it.
Okay, that makes it better.
Is it though? Is it though?
Well, it depends on how much you got paid for.
I mean, I did it at a low.
Yeah.
I did it at a nearly low, like the effort that I put into it was like a blink of an eye, right?
Yeah.
However, it took me 12 years to be able to do that in a blink of an eye. Yeah. So like, I guess my question is, say they do decide to move forward with us.
Mm-hmm.
I already solved your problem from my perspective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, was that barely, what the test was? Yeah.
Well, they wanted to see something new and different. They sent me a couple photos, a couple taglines, and they were like, we just want to see something new and different for our campaign. And I cranked out 4 in like a half hour. But like, and it honestly looks better than anything that they have even on their site or any other social. And I'm a little like butthurt with myself because I'm like, why the hell did I just do that? You know what I mean?
It's one thing if it's like, can you do this work that's totally not related but still in our brand as a test to see how well you can use the brand and its assets? It's another to be like, can you just take a first stab at the work that we need? Because they're kind of getting like a try before you buy.
They're getting a try before you buy. I don't know if that was actually what they had asked, but it was, I called it a vibe check, but it was like, well, how else am I, like, what else am I going to do? You know what I mean? You have your brand guidelines. You sent me a tagline. You sent me photos. So I'm like, let me just, whatever. But I guess my question, it goes back to that like hourly where it's like, I can tell you right now, I know what I delivered is far better than if it's anything that I've seen all of their work. They have mediocre designers at best. Not trying to say that I'm like this like pompous person. I'm going to shots fired in the sense that like I've worked fucking hard for my skill. So I'm just going to say that, okay? Sorry if that's coming off arrogant.
I've worked fucking hard, okay?
No, but I have, you know what I mean? And so, like, it's just, like, annoying. I'm sorry. We can cut this.
No, this is great. No, it's good.
It's just annoying to me where I'm like, what? You can't even quantify. I can't give you an hourly for me just, like, sharing my brain for, like, taking your stuff and doing an exercise. Should I have said no?
I don't know. I mean, that's tough. It's a really tough one.
They would be a good logo on the client list, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, if it's for that, if they have good recognition, then you might as well like try and win the business for sure. But it is weird. It puts you in a weird position for sure. Puts you in a weird position.
Another
Because
thing
like,
that yeah.
why not just make it a mini project? Why does it have to be a test for a bigger project? Like, because to me, I would feel like they're shopping around. Like they're
They're
shopping
shopping
for the best answer and then they're just going to buy it. Or they're just going to get a bunch of ideas,
and
pay
send them to
cheap
their
for them,
designers.
and then send them. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I don't know what their deal is, but I know that I didn't feel comfortable doing it. I'm curious if we can ask this to like an audience because
Mm.
it's like it's a place on my brain that I'm like, I can't. It reminds me of that analogy where like Picasso was like asked to,
Mm-hmm.
draw something on a napkin and he did it in like 5 minutes, but it was worth like to him, it was worth
Thousands of dollars.
all of the hours his whole career is now why he can be able to do that. It was very related to this exercise for me because I was like, all right, I've got a bunch of things, mash them up. Here's 3 different designs. And I was like, I don't need to look at I know all of their stuff doesn't even look even close to this from a sophisticated lens, from a high end lens, whatever they need. And so it's like, yeah, it's not refined, but I just like threw some stuff together to show you. And it's like, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
they don't own it. I didn't have them sign a contract or anything. I own it, but
well, it's interesting. It's like without the full strategy behind it, how valuable is just the design exercise? That's one thought, because it is just like aesthetic, which is important, but if it's not, it doesn't have the full weight behind it. And maybe it did.
I think, let me add one thing before you respond to that. I think, though, you and I know from an asset standpoint, when you see polished guidelines that you can leverage and you know the aesthetic that they're going for, even in an unrefined lens, the things you can build out for a campaign, even from and defend them strategically, which I did.
Yeah. So this is, you're bringing me to my second point, which is like, no, you're good. It sets me up well. It's there's like a separation between the intentionality behind design, the strategy, and what I think of as design tactics. And a lot of people are lacking, a lot of like younger businesses out there that seem like they're in need of design help are not delivering on design tactics, which is just like the foundations of layout, composition, your basic visual stuff, like just solving the mini problems that are within one design. I think I've talked about this on a blog that I wrote a long time ago. But there are people that are very skilled in the tactical world of design, just taking the pieces and making something good out of it from a visual perspective. And then the whole other big important work is, yes, you have the tactics down, but does it align with strategy? Does it speak to your customer? Does it have resonance with them? Is this sticky? Does this have message? All that is not covered in just the pure design exercise that I'm assuming they probably did. And as you being who you are, it's hard for you to just do tactics anymore. You're adding in strategy. I was thinking about this today. When you learn how to do figure drawing, or when you're learning how to draw things, you start off by, doing the skeleton and adding volume, and then you start doing the shading and texture and all that stuff, and then you get the final result. But when you watch like masters do it, they can skip all those steps and just do the final line drawing because they have all that in their head. So to others, it feels like, oh, I just need to learn how to do the line drawings. I don't need the basis. But no, they have that basis already innate in them, and they're building on top of it. I feel like there's a parallel there where people are focusing so much on the design tactics, just the pure nitty-gritty elements of design, and not the strategic, resonant part of design that won't be covered in that one little exercise. So in a way, are they getting the full value of it? Probably not, but I feel like it's a red flag that they're kind of conflating the two. You know what I mean? Like that they're kind of putting a lot of value just on the aesthetic, enough to do like this little test, and not trusting that there's more to it and it's more valuable to have like a full, well thought out strategy. I don't know. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I feel like in summary, this recording, this episode is really just like, I don't know, talking about the day-to-day struggles of being a designer and trying to figure out like, when is it okay to say, all right, I don't really like this practice.
Yeah.
Is this worth it? Or, or do I do it anyway and see if I'm right or wrong about this?
Yeah. And that's a hard line to walk because, we believe that companies' intentions are good. Like at least I default that way. It sounds like you default that way too. But it is a practice that doesn't, benefit both sides equally, for sure. And, maybe it could have been an opportunity to like talk about it to the client, but also they probably don't give a shit either. So that's why we have a podcast to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, to like kind of defend their side of it. I can understand, so when I hire designers, I do like sample out, like I'll do like a project. It's probably not because of my own level of measuring my own ethics towards things. Like I don't plug them onto a real project, like it's definitely like maybe it's an internal exercise or something just to see how their brain works. So like, yeah. I understand that there is an inherent risk that you're always doing when you hire a designer. You can look at their portfolio and be like, yeah, they look like I'd reach out to them, but I don't know if they'd actually, like, I've never seen them in my specific industry. So it's like, right. I do think that they're not wrong in shopping in that way. But then it gets hairy when it's like, we didn't sign a contract for this kind of low-end work, because I'm not going to sign a contract. One, I'm not going to sign a contract to hire and then share a sample of my brain anyway. Like that's right. Proprietary to me until you sign right. with me. But then it gets messy because it's like, well, what about the people out there? And not to sound like a fear factor thing. And it's like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is my precious thing. But it's like, maybe they go with like someone else, say, in their design. But then like my like process and all of the concepts that I did influence their new part of their refresh that they're in the middle of, or you know what I mean? Yeah. How is that? And that's like that. How do you kind of mix that in? Because it's like, well, you're giving them a blueprint, maybe not total context to your brain, but you're giving them that for this low end thing. And now they can run with it because it's their assets are being applied to this.
Right.
So like where does that go? It's
right.
Not good. It's not good.
Well,
I think it opens a can of worms.
And like, you don't do a try before you buy with your doctor. You're not like, can you prove that you know medicine before you fix my leg? They're like, no, you need a cast. You need this bone set right now. To put another reference out there, there's a book called Win Without Pitching by Blair Enns. And I know Chris Do from the future talks about this book a lot. This book, Win Without Pitching, and The Business of Expertise are two books that really influenced my opinions on this. And he talks about how, the same thing, like you wouldn't go to a doctor and have them kind of prove their worth to you. You go them because you want their diagnosis. And this is exactly the case where like the author of Win Without Pitching would suggest that you make the prescriptive process a charge. Like that's a service in and of itself. The diagnosis of what your problem is something of value worth paying for. And it's one thing to kind of have this design exercise to, prove your worth, which in and of itself isn't great. But it's another to have it be one piece of the project that's at stake. I think there's a right way to do testing like that and a wrong way to do testing. And I think the right way is to have it be a completely separate project from what you're auditioning for, essentially. Like have them make a presentation template with the brand assets and see what they come up with or whatever. But don't have it be, give me 3 ideas for this project that we're actively developing and going to put in motion if it's good enough, because then you're shopping around. And not that that's what they're intending to do, but that's what it feels like.
Even if they're not intending to do it, they're going to be put in that position where that's what they're doing.
And right. And they're put in the position that has made it the expectation that, we need to test designers for whatever reason. To put a personal spin on it, I had to go through a test similar to that when I was doing, ironically enough, this healthcare website where I was kind of like being tested to see if I can do code for them as well as just design work. I ended up just doing design work, not because of this test, but that's why it's ironic. But they had me do like a code test to prove that you can do what you're doing.
Fixing all their bugs.
Well, that's the thing, is like that could have been what they do, and that's what you hear about on people that talk about negative experiences with tests. They had me like build a WordPress, like a super generic WordPress theme that was purely like, can you set one up and install these plugins and blah, blah, blah. It was not something they were going to use or as part of their business or anything. It was purely like a encapsulated test that was purely like on skill, not on, I don't know, like design. I feel like if there's a way to create that kind of structure, that's better, because I didn't feel like they're getting free work out of me kind of thing. It was like, they just want they want to know that even though my resume says I can do these things, that I can actually do these things. And it's hard in design, I think, because it's not something you can easily prove, It's so easy to hodgepodge together, Photoshop together designs that there is a little bit of like, what can you actually do? But at the same time, if you run your own business as a design strategist and have all these things going on, like, just hire them. Just hire them to do what they say they can do. I don't know. Maybe there's more nuance to it, but
I think it's tough because, I have been at the negotiation table with a couple people where I've realized that they're pretty burnt out by the scammers or the wannabe designers. And so it's not like I can't empathize with these people. There are more people that never went to design school, barely got a degree in anything, which nothing against different ways of working, but and then, they say that they can kind of do these things. And the reality is that they can't. They haven't spent the thousands of hours of doing these things and being in, corporate and being in small studios and, freelance and, really rounding out their space. So they don't know how to sort of apply, but they're saying, hey, hire me because, look at the job market right now. You can't even blame them. You know what I mean? It's a lot going on right now. So yeah, it's tough. I wonder if there's like other ways where it's just kind of like, how else can you prove this? I
feel like the if I were able to change the situation from the client perspective, I would try and work with a new team on like a smaller scope project, like a full project, but a tester project rather than a literal test. Like, even though it's paid, which is better than most, so kudos there, but just work with them on a small engagement to start out and see if you like working together rather than, because what are they really learning about you from this test? They're saying that you can make a good image, which is just one small part of design rather than your whole strategic brain. Yeah. It's funny, I don't know if you have more time, but I went to a networking event, and there was a kid who was right out of college, who's a communications major, wanted to get into kind of the brand side of design and more like creative work. And he was saying that he's like doing all these LinkedIn connections and applying to jobs over LinkedIn and doing networking events, and was asking about, what should I put in my portfolio to get in front of these people, like what kinds of projects. And I ended up saying, like, just do some of your own personal work, make something for you that shows off your skills. And I was like, what brands get you excited? What are you most interested in? And he was like, well, I have experience working with insurance and I work with this thing over here. And I was like, do you like insurance? No. I was like, then don't do that. Go, what do you like? I'm asking you, what do you like? Make a project about something that you care about and just do it differently. Show how you would do it. Do a mini campaign on a new product for them. So I don't know. I don't know where this story is going, but I'm saying that it's a weird spot in the marketplace right now for people that are just trying to find jobs, even at the entry level, facing all these like weird AI HR bots trying to hire people based on who has the best keywords in the resume, and kids that, want to do good work but don't really know where to get in, how to start that creative process.
Yeah, and I noticed too, I think with like a lot of like younger designers is that, and it might just be one of those things where I don't know how you kind of train experience, but they're not answering the questions in a critical way, and they're not asking the right questions in a you know what I mean? They're not quite digging more than a certain level of surface that I think happens when you start having so many conversations about this, and you have things that you can pull from your archive to like defend those experimentations, those practices that you've kind of built out throughout your career as a designer. I think that younger designers should focus a lot on experimentation throughout all of it, to film, animation, video, 2D, and really harness that power, and then like also like take in AI and play around with it and figure out where it fits into the fold as well. But I think the ones that are trying to, I see a lot of, there's a lot of grit and a lot of gut that's happening in Gen Z. And while that's admirable, when they're coming in and they're like, yeah, I want to be art director, I'm like, it's not like I'm saying, oh, you got to work up the ladder, but like,
you got to walk before you run.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to get hurt if you run. You know what I mean? Like you might make a really, really bad mistake, and who knows how that's going to play out in your life. You know what I mean? So there is like, I think there is a process in which you become an expert, and you need to kind of honor that process and be versatile. And but
I think
I'll give it to them though. Gen Z's got some got some grit, got some gut that I don't know if I see that all too often in millennial. It's
tough out there. They're certainly making it work.
Yeah.
I think to kind of tie it all together, I think it's hard for anybody, especially now, to kind of know how the world works, how the system works. So there's a lot of people like banging their head against the wall trying to make something work when they don't really understand what the criteria is. And as somebody who's somewhat new in the business space, I'm going through the same growing pains of like, I have all these things that I want to work on, and I want to work hard, and I can work hard, but what do I work on? What's the thing? How does this whole system work? And I've always been really fascinated in like economics and business and trying to understand, how does this relationship of I'll give you money for that thing translate into a career and a life and a whole, takeover. But it's getting to that heart of you just got to learn what the systems are that are in place for this relationship, I guess. Like you got to learn how it works before you try and throw all your effort into one basket kind of thing. It's not all lead gen. It's not all cold calls. You got to learn how people actually work.
Yeah, and have fun and, ride the waves as they come.
Yeah. I like that you're always bringing like the Zen approach to it. You're like, you sit down, you relax, you ride the wave. It's going to be what it's going to be. Make space for mental health and wellness.
I think that you're actually...
And then you're like, fuck this shit. Fuck these people.
I know. I was like, I'm definitely not the relaxed, chill one of the podcast. You're the one that brings in this like cool, good vibes. I'm over here like dropped, kicked door down this week, I get very passionate. So.
Yeah. That's why you're creative. That's why you're in a creative field. You need that passion.
Part passion, part misery. It all mends together and gets you this thing. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The
Well, I
artist
think-
way.
The artist way, that's for sure. I think that's a perfect place to end the podcast for today. I think that's a nice little note to leave on.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to Working with Designers. Kristen and I would love to hear from you. Please give us a like and send us your thoughts on whatever platform you found us on. Let us know what questions you want us to talk about in the next episode by filling out our contact form at workingwithdesigners.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.